"You shouldn't open that container, human." The voice came from behind the translucent cargo barrier, soft, calm, and carrying the strange musical tone that many off-world species had when they spoke Terran Standard. Elias froze with the diagnostic scanner halfway to the lock. For a moment he wondered if exhaustion had finally made him hallucinate. The cargo terminal was nearly empty this time of night. Only the low hum of atmospheric processors and the distant metallic groan of docking clamps filled the cavernous loading bay. Outside the massive observation panels, the desert of Charis colony stretched endlessly under 3 faint moons. Humans had only settled this world 20 years ago, and the place still felt unfinished, half colony, half construction site. Elias worked nights because hardly anyone else wanted to. He leaned closer to the container. "You talk," he muttered. Most biological cargo didn't. The capsule standing in front of him was different from the usual freight shipments. It was tall, narrow, and wrapped in a lattice of shimmering restraint fields that pulsed faintly blue across the surface like slow lightning trapped inside glass. Alien tech, the kind that never showed up in normal trade shipments. Elias glanced at the shipping manifest projected above the crate. Biological asset, transfer authorization, Imperial Channel. That line alone should have been enough to make him walk away. Instead, curiosity pulled him forward. "Look," the voice said again, a little firmer this time, "I understand humans have a reputation for curiosity. But this is not a situation you want to be curious about." Elias squinted through the transparent alloy of the container. At first, he only saw the pale glow of the containment field. Then a figure moved inside. She stepped forward slowly, and the dim cargo lights revealed her. Elias blinked. Oh, the word escaped him before he could stop it. The prisoner inside the capsule was not the monstrous alien his imagination had prepared him for. She looked almost human, almost. Her skin held a faint luminous quality, like moonlight trapped beneath the surface. Long silver hair fell over her shoulders, catching the blue energy glow around her. Her face was elegant and sharply defined, and her ears extended slightly longer than a human's, tapering delicately at the ends. But it was her eyes that held him. Bright silver, reflective, too bright for any human. She watched him with quiet focus, as if studying him the same way he was studying her. "You see," she said gently, "you've already opened the diagnostic scan. That's step 1 toward making a very poor decision." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "Well," he said, "technically step 1 was me working here." The alien woman tilted her head. For a brief moment, something like amusement flickered in her eyes. Are all humans this relaxed around unidentified alien prisoners? "Only the ones on night shift," Elias said. That earned the smallest hint of a smile. Elias leaned closer to the capsule. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'm supposed to check cargo seals, that's my job, and your crate is not normal. That much is obvious. You want to tell me what you are?" The woman folded her arms, the restraint field shimmering softly around her wrists. "I am someone who was not meant to survive this journey." Elias frowned. "That sounds dramatic." "It is accurate." He studied the restraint field more closely. The technology surrounding her wasn't just a cage. It was military-grade containment. Multiple layered energy rings locked around her arms and torso, adjusting automatically with every small movement she made. Whatever she was, someone had gone to extreme effort to keep her contained. Elias tapped the scanner against the lock interface. The display flashed warnings in several alien languages he couldn't read. "Yeah," he murmured, "that seems excessive." "It is." He glanced back at her. "So what did you do?" The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer to the inside of the transparent wall. The containment field rippled faintly as she approached. For a moment, the two of them stood face to face through the glowing barrier. "I trusted the wrong people," she said quietly. Elias let out a slow breath. "Ah." He nodded slightly. "Yeah, that'll do it." Across the cargo bay, an automated loader drone rolled past with a whining motor. Its sensor beam swept across the container for a second before moving on. The alien woman's eyes followed it carefully. Then she looked back at Elias. "You should leave," she said softly. "Sooner rather than later. And just forget I saw you." "That would be wise." Elias scratched his chin. "That's the problem with curiosity," he said. "Once you start wondering about something, it's hard to stop." She studied him for several seconds. Her gaze moved across his face like she was measuring something invisible. "You don't even know who captured me," she said. "Nope. You don't know why." "Correct." You don't know what would happen if you interfered. That part I'm guessing would be bad. A pause, then Elias gave a small shrug. But you still look like someone who shouldn't be in a box. The alien woman stared at him. For the first time since he'd opened the scanner interface, her calm expression cracked slightly. Not fear, something else, something closer to disbelief. You humans, she said quietly. What about us? You make decisions based on instinct rather than strategy. Elias smiled faintly, sometimes instincts faster. Her silver eyes softened for just a moment. You have no idea how dangerous that instinct may become tonight. Probably. Elias glanced back at the lock panel, then he looked at her again. So, he said casually, hypothetically speaking. The scanner beeped softly as he ran another diagnostic. How fast can you run? The alien woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at Elias like he had just asked the most confusing question she had heard in years. Run, she repeated slowly. Yeah, Elias said, tapping the side of the control console. Because if I open this thing and you can only jog dramatically while looking heroic, we might have a problem. For a brief moment, she simply looked at him. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. It was quiet, almost disbelieving, but unmistakably real. You are either very brave, she said, or profoundly foolish. Night shift maintenance technician, Elias replied. We're a complicated species. Her silver eyes drifted to the control panel beside him. The containment field hummed faintly between them, a shimmering cage of layered alien technology. Those restraints are not simple, she said. They were designed by military engineers. You won't be able to. The scanner chirped. Elias frowned at the screen. Huh. What? Well, he said, tilting the display toward himself. It's definitely military. That was obvious. Yeah, but the security architecture is weird. She leaned closer to the transparent wall. Weird how? Elias squinted at the diagnostic code. It's layered, he said. Like someone added extra systems on top of the original design. Almost like they modified it in a hurry. The woman's expression sharpened instantly. Modified by whom? Not sure. He scrolled through the interface. But whoever did it, Elias said slowly, they weren't the original builders. The alien woman grew very still. For several seconds she didn't speak. Then she said quietly, that confirms something I suspected. Oh good, Elias muttered. Nothing like confirming dangerous conspiracies during cargo inspections. Before she could respond, a sharp mechanical chime echoed through the cargo bay. Elias looked up. Two tall figures had just entered through the main loading corridor. They were unmistakably alien. Both wore sleek armored uniforms of dark metallic fabric that reflected the overhead lights in faint purple patterns. Their skin carried a faint golden tone, and their eyes glowed softly beneath smooth brow ridges. Imperial. Even Elias recognized that style. Alien empires loved uniforms. The two guards walked with slow, controlled precision between the cargo rows, scanning, searching. The woman inside the container noticed them instantly. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They're early. Friends of yours? Elias asked. No. Great. The guards approached another cargo platform nearby, their scanning device emitting a narrow cone of blue light across the crates. Elias leaned casually against the container. You know, he murmured, this is usually the part of the night where I'm bored enough to count dust particles. They're looking for this container, the woman said quietly. Yeah, that was my guess. The scanner beeped again. Elias glanced down. Interesting. What now? I think the modifications I mentioned earlier. He tapped a few commands. Might actually make this easier. Her eyes widened slightly. That's impossible. Well, Elias said, whoever modified the system replaced the outer encryption layer with something simpler. Why would they do that? Elias smirked, because they were in a hurry. The guards were closer now. One of them stopped and examined a shipment of mining equipment. The other lifted the scanning device again. The blue beam swept slowly across the cargo rows. It was getting closer. The alien woman looked at Elias. You realize if they catch you interfering with that lock. I know, he said. You will be imprisoned. Probably, possibly executed. Bit extreme for a maintenance violation. They are not known for moderation. Elias studied the lock interface one more time. Then he sighed. You know what really bothers me? This situation, she suggested, no. He pressed a sequence of commands. The fact that whoever locked you in here, the containment field flickered, did a really sloppy job. The energy restraints crackled violently. Inside the capsule, the glowing rings around her arms sputtered and destabilized. The alien woman's eyes widened. You. The lock disengaged with a sharp metallic click. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the entire containment field collapsed with a sound like shattering glass made of light. Silence filled the cargo bay. The alien woman stared down at her now empty wrists. Then she looked up at Elias. You actually did it. Turns out Imperial security engineers are not prepared for bored humans with diagnostic scanners. Across the bay, the scanning beam suddenly paused. One of the guards had noticed the power fluctuation. His glowing eyes snapped toward them. He spoke sharply in a language Elias didn't understand. The second guard immediately turned. Both of them were now staring directly at the open container. Ah, Elias muttered. That would be the complication phase, the woman said calmly. The guards began moving toward them, fast. Their armor hummed as energy weapons slid into their hands. Elias looked at her. So, he said quickly, about that running thing. The alien woman stepped out of the container. For a moment, the cargo lights reflected across her luminous skin, and she straightened to her full height with surprising grace. Up close, she carried herself very differently than a prisoner. Even exhausted and restrained moments earlier, there was something unmistakably commanding about her posture. The guards were only 20 meters away now. One shouted something sharply. Elias gestured toward the maintenance corridor behind the cargo platforms. Exit S that way. She glanced at it, then back at him. You're coming with me. Wasn't planning on staying. One of the guards raised his weapon. A bright pulse of blue energy fired across the cargo bay. The blast slammed into the side of a nearby container, spraying molten metal across the floor. Elias flinched. Okay, he said, suddenly very motivated. Running now sounds great. The alien woman grabbed his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Stay close, she said. Then she ran, not like someone escaping, like someone who had spent a lifetime moving through danger. Behind them, the guards shouted. Their armored footsteps thundered across the metal floor. Energy blasts lit the cargo bay in violent flashes of blue. Elias sprinted beside her down the narrow service corridor, lungs burning. You know, he gasped between breaths, I probably should have asked your name before committing several interstellar crimes. She glanced at him briefly as they ran. A faint smile appeared despite the chaos. You may call me Lyra. Another energy blast exploded behind them, showering sparks across the corridor walls. Elias nodded breathlessly. Nice to meet you, Lyra. He risked a quick look over his shoulder. The guards were gaining, fast. Out of curiosity, he panted. Yes. Who exactly did we just make very angry? Lyra didn't slow down, but her answer came quietly. An empire. An empire. Elias nearly tripped over his own feet as the words registered. That seems like the kind of detail you mentioned earlier. Lyra pulled him around a corner into a narrow maintenance passage, where dim emergency lights glowed along the walls. The corridor smelled faintly of coolant and metal dust. Would that information have changed your decision? She asked. Yes, Elias said between breaths. I might have run faster. Another blast of blue energy slammed into the hallway behind them, the shockwave rattling pipes along the ceiling. Lyra slowed suddenly. Elias almost collided with her. What? She pressed her hand against a sealed service hatch embedded in the wall. The panel flickered as if recognizing something invisible in her touch. A soft chime sounded. The hatch slid open. Elias blinked. You hacked it. I requested access, she said calmly. You requested. Inside, they stepped into a small cargo elevator barely large enough for 2 people. Lyra pressed a symbol on the control panel, and the doors sealed with a hiss. Outside, heavy footsteps thundered into the corridor just as the elevator began to descend. The guards' voices echoed faintly through the metal. Then the elevator dropped into silence. Elias leaned back against the wall, breathing hard. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, he looked at her. So. She looked back. So. That empire you mentioned. Yes, you want to elaborate? Lyra watched the elevator lights slide downward. I am not simply someone who angered an empire, she said quietly. Elias rubbed his face. I had a feeling you were going to say something like that. The elevator reached the lowest service level with a soft mechanical thud. The doors opened onto an empty hangar platform facing the desert beyond the colony walls. A single small shuttle rested near the edge of the landing strip, its engines dark. Cold night air flowed into the hangar. 3 moons hung above the horizon. Lyra stepped forward slowly. For the first time since he had met her, she looked uncertain. Elias followed her out onto the platform. "That shuttle yours?" he asked. "Yes." "You parked illegally, by the way. I will file the proper paperwork later." Elias chuckled weakly. "Good to hear." She stopped beside the ship but did not board. Instead, she turned to face him fully. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The desert wind moved softly through the hangar. "You risked your life for someone you didn't know," Lyra said. Elias shrugged. "You looked like someone who needed help. You didn't ask for payment." "I figured the galaxy's richest empires probably don't tip maintenance workers anyway." Her silver eyes searched his face carefully. "You truly believed I was just a prisoner?" "Pretty much." She took a slow breath. "I should tell you the truth before I leave." Elias crossed his arms. "I was hoping for that part." Lyra reached up slowly and touched something hidden beneath the collar of the plain garment she wore. With a quiet metallic click, a small device detached from her neck. The moment it came away, the air around her shimmered. A faint glow spread across her skin. Her posture changed subtly, almost imperceptibly. But suddenly Elias understood something he hadn't been able to name before. She hadn't carried herself like a prisoner. She had carried herself like someone used to being obeyed. "My name," she said softly, "is Lyra Valerius." Elias waited, and, he asked, the faint glow around her intensified as the ship behind them awakened, its systems recognizing her presence. "I am the sovereign ruler of the Valerius Dominion." Elias blinked once, twice. Then he looked up at the sky where distant stars burned quietly above the colony. "Okay," he said slowly, "that explains the Empire." Lyra watched his reaction carefully. "You are not surprised." "Oh, I'm surprised," Elias said. "Just trying to process how badly I've ruined my employment record." For a moment, Lyra simply stared at him. Then she laughed again. This time it was brighter, warmer. "You are unlike any person I have met." "That's not always a compliment." Before she could respond, the sky above the colony suddenly erupted with light. Both of them looked up. Massive shapes slid silently out of the clouds. 3 enormous starships descended through the upper atmosphere, their sleek hulls reflecting moonlight like polished obsidian. Each ship carried the same radiant crest along its side. A crown surrounded by 3 stars. Elias whistled quietly. "I'm guessing those are yours." "They are." The ships hovered above the colony in absolute silence. Then smaller escort craft began descending toward the hangar. Elias shifted uncomfortably. "I assume they're not here to arrest me." "No," Lyra said softly. "They are here because they believed I was dead." Within minutes, a landing craft touched down at the far end of the platform. The ramp lowered. Several tall alien figures emerged. Their armor shimmered with ceremonial patterns, and their luminous eyes widened the moment they saw Lyra standing beside a human technician in dusty work clothes. The first of them approached quickly. Then, to Elias' complete shock, the alien warrior dropped to one knee. "Your Majesty," he said reverently. Behind him, the others did the same. Lyra stood silently for a moment, her expression calm but distant. Then she turned her head slightly toward Elias. Every one of the kneeling aliens noticed the gesture. Their glowing eyes shifted toward him. Confusion rippled through their ranks. One of them whispered something quietly. Another looked at Elias with open disbelief. Lyra spoke. "Rise." They obeyed instantly, but their eyes never left the human standing beside her. "This man," Lyra said clearly, "saved my life." The aliens stared at Elias. One of them stepped forward cautiously. "He knew who you were." "No." Elias raised a hand slightly, still catching up on that part. The alien officer looked even more confused. "You aided the Empress without knowing her identity." Elias shrugged. She was stuck in a box. A strange silence fell over the hangar. The aliens exchanged looks. Some seemed impressed, others deeply unsettled. Lyra watched them carefully. "In my absence," she continued, "many among our empire chose caution, fear, silence." Her silver eyes moved across the kneeling officers. "But this human," she glanced at Elias, "acted with nothing but instinct and compassion." The officers lowered their heads slightly. Lyra stepped closer to Elias. For the first time, her voice softened. "I returned tonight not only to reclaim my throne," she said quietly. "I returned because I owed a debt." Elias shifted awkwardly. "You don't owe me anything." Lyra smiled faintly. "That is where you are wrong." She turned back toward the waiting officers. "Prepare the fleet," she commanded calmly. "We return to the Dominion at dawn." They bowed again. Then Lyra looked at Elias one final time. "You may return to your life here," she said, "or—" She gestured toward the towering ships in orbit. "You may see the galaxy you helped change." Elias looked at the massive starships hanging in the sky, then back at the quiet desert colony behind him, then at the alien empress who had once been a prisoner in a cargo crate. He exhaled slowly. "You know," he said, "I think my night shift just got a promotion."